And I didn't know that now if you're supervising psych associates in Maryland, now they require 3 credits in supervision training, and they had never required that before. And I submitted everything. I had my ethics, because they require ethics and cultural competency. Had everything, all the boxes checked, took all the extra online classes. And then they came back to me, well, where's your supervision credits? You're supervising people. I'm like, what supervision credits? And then that was the last minute scramble. And of course you pay top dollar because it's the last minute. You just do whatever you can find. But they were nice. They gave me a couple of days after my deadline. They're like, okay, get it into us whenever you have it. And then, just try to do it as soon as you can. So.
It is about that humanizing though, because it's hard to keep track of all of it.
It really is. So if we could, do you guys in Virginia need something like cultural competency? Like, do you have requirements like ethics and cultural competency? Or do you
ethics, and there's a new one on trauma that we're trying to keep track of. And then I don't know about cultural competency, but yeah.
Well, we can call, I wonder if we can get accredited or call this one of those. This could be a trauma and cultural competency.
Definitely is those things. I think the trauma is more of is not for our license as much as it's a CB thing that we have to have so many hours, or I guess it is hours, CUs of trauma training over so much time. Is that right, Gabrielle? You keep track of all things required for us.
Yeah, I heard with the new Step Virginia requirement, the CSBs are requiring a certain number of trauma hours for each new person that comes in and each continuing person. They haven't clarified if it's per year or once it's one and done. We don't know about that yet, but that's kind of where it's at right now.
That's cool. So that is one way to, if you guys like this and you want to do this training, I mean, it's something we can design together. Or you've got it. I'm giving you the slides. You've got the slides. Gabrielle has everything. So, and you've got, I mean, we just have one last piece to do today. But the problem is I don't do that because every state is so different in what they require. So I'm not set up for CEUs, but many times in my trainings, hi there, Liz. Hi. Many times in my trainings, we're talking about how to get this, and Dr. Portia's here too, hi. We're talking about how to actually do this as a training. And get therapists to feel more comfortable in working with folks with IDD. Right, how to do this. So I'm saying CEUs is how to do it. That's the only time I've been super successful, when we could offer CEUs. And if you can offer them for free, that's great. But you can also charge, because sometimes if you charge a moderate amount, not a lot, people feel like they're getting their money's worth, or they're getting something more. Sometimes free doesn't always communicate itself as valuable here in America. You know what I mean?
I was listening to a TED Talk this morning about like how to drive people in and how to get people involved. So like how Martin Luther King did it. He didn't focus on like, hi, I'm Martin Luther King. He had a dream and like a vision, and you start with this why, or like how Apple does it. They start with this why. And I think some of it is really starting with that why with other therapists, like not the how, like we're going to give you this training, but the why they need this and why they should want that. It was a really good TED Talk. You want to look it up.
That's good.
Oh.
You know, like why should other therapists provide this? Why is it in their beliefs?
I love that.
Really
You
good.
even listened to a TED Talk this morning. Mary, I'm so impressed.
I live a fun life.
You're self-actualizing, that's for sure. The why. Okay, the why is very clear.
Because
Because
the how is we're gonna give this training, but just telling people I'm gonna give you a training, they're like, that's boring. Like, why do you want this? You know, why do we buy Apple products? Because they're integrated. Like the Apple products I know that I buy work with my cell phone, they work with my computer, they do all that. It's kind of like if you go to somebody's website, I don't want to see I specialize in and I do this and I do that. I want to see why I should go to you as like a consumer. Like, oh, you get ADHD and you'll make me be able to focus, starting with that why and not I.
That's good.
I'm studying marketing right now.
that's the thing. That's the thing. And so, I mean, the why is about people with disabilities, right?
And the why is also that I think that, like I like to say, some therapists are more like, I don't do windows. You know, I don't do these diagnoses, and to recognize that, yes, you can do them. Yes, you're going to do them. Not in like a stop way, but like, it's really about the recognition that these are issues that autism and having a disability is pretty normal, and it's going to be within your population. I don't know what that is.
Somebody called in, but we can hear their phone calls or something. There we go. Thank you. So yeah, that's so true. How do we do an outreach? How do we get that out there?
I think that's a really good point. I think part of that why is we all know somebody who's had a disability, or we've all had that one case with somebody who had a disability that we just didn't feel competent in.
Exactly.
Increase our competency, and that would be the why. Not I'm going to come in and I'm going to train you on these things, but
I'm awesome.
have you ever had that one case?
Oh, that's really nice. I like that. Increase our competency. And the I don't do windows is hysterical. Yeah. That reminds me of like the 60s or the right? People used to say that all the time. It's a good one. Yeah, I think that's really great. I think that increasing your competency is way better than you should be working with people with disabilities, which is always my approach. Like, why aren't you doing it? Come on now.
And depending where you live, you're going to come across things more and more, either because your region is poor in resources, like maybe people who haven't been identified as ID before and they're coming into your agency as full-grown people, or the opposite, because more and more people are being identified as being on the autism spectrum. Now, how long can you say I don't do windows because they're flooding in your office?
Right.
Exactly.
Let me teach you how to help them.
And those undiagnosed clients are not something that you can like predict and say, like, you know, no screening line is going to say, oh, do you think you might have autism or you might have a developmental disability? You're going to get the client. And also it could be that I have one of my, had a client a few years ago. It was her daughter who had autism pretty severely. Like she was really, when you say ABA, was an ABA because she was compulsively punching corners of everything, like couches. She needed to punch them. She had some interesting, sensory issues. But of course, she wasn't my client. But I have an adult, client who came for me for anxiety and some other issues. But she's still my, but it's still, this is one of the things she's dealing with. She was a single parent. So that's kind of the, you can run, but you can't hide.
That's really true. And you're going to get people you don't even realize. And then the thing is, in your state, you're going to have a lot of this now. A lot of the people that were institutionalized that are no longer institutionalized, and a lot of the people that aren't getting supports and really need it. There's just from what you've recently been through with people being released from hospitals and institutions and large facilities. You're going to have a lot. So people will already be encountering this. I think clinicians will already be like you guys are, right? Like you have more and more folks being referred to you.
I also think it's the buy-in of the bigger institutions because, like, for instance, I know for my agency, the amount of like clients that have been either that are getting therapy with autism is a little bit easier because there could be more high functioning, but I would say that the amount of people who are getting serviced with an intellectual disability is limited, and not because they don't need it, but because I don't think, like you have said many times, is like they're focused on behavior, not mental health, and their need sometimes to have an opportunity to process what's happened to them. And I think that that's really where, the more we are competent, the more that we can advocate for in a larger scale for people to say, to kind of recognize, hey, if the people that you work with are acting like, or are responding like this to you, it might not be because they don't like you. It might be because they're struggling. That is their language right now. That is their language, is to throw things at you, and they scream. And it's not because it's not personal. It's because they need help. And that would be where you would process it to that's where I think that's when outpatient therapy can be very helpful to help resolve some of those struggles that have been there and help them actually think differently, because sometimes they kind of like do their thing and they don't realize that sometimes, maybe getting a therapist, somebody else's perspective on this, on how my mother, my sister, my brother, cousin, whoever I'm taking care of, the person in my home is acting, then maybe that will help me to strategize and actually help them as well so I'll be more person-centered. That's how I've seen, at least in my.
Exactly. Yeah, so there's opportunities for outreach. I mean, some of you guys are connected to different clinics. Okay, just wanted to have that conversation, and if we could figure out how to set up CEUs, that's the key. So I'm always asked, when they're giving CEUs, do a blurb, do objectives, right? You have to meet those criteria. I think you guys did that, didn't you? Offer CEUs for the first training?
Yes. And that's, Gabrielle's not right here right now, but that's Gabrielle's thing. She's really good at that stuff.
Yeah, so you guys could do
Part of her job description.
And you could charge, I'll tell you, you could charge and you could say that this is cultural competency, the culture of disability. And you can use these slides or do your own. But, here's your package. I think your state is really launched to take off this way. Because of the deinstitutionalization and because of DOJ, Department of Justice coming in and saying you have to serve people with disabilities better. So there's funding there, there's money there. I know I was asked to we did 6 different locations through NADD where they got good money because the state had to allocate it because of the Department of Justice. So, and then the people coordinating it were the REACH folks who are so great. We talked about them last time. And, because they had to check that box. They had to say, we are training folks and working with people with dual diagnosis. So we didn't train therapists, but we had a lot of therapists. We did have a lot of clinicians and therapists. And so we had a piece on doing therapy with them. We trained on I have it over here, the DSM ID. It's an interpretation of the DSM for people with intellectual disabilities. So Rob Fletcher, who had edited that, did a training on that. And I did a general working with the trauma of folks with disabilities. And then we did 3 days. And then the third day was doing therapy with folks. And there was money allocated from the state for that. So I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't some kind of path forward in your state. Exciting. Okay. Let us go back to I need Gabrielle when she comes back to share my screen. Oh, well, we can talk some more.
Karen, I have a question. It was something I was processing, probably, wasn't working just, but it was something about autism and trauma. And I was wondering what you thought of this. And I guess everybody is that when clients have, I have particularly one client right now that's very obsessive about his trauma, the things that he experienced when he was younger. And I feel like, and it made me connect the fact that he, being obsessive, like the fact is that we really do struggle, when something bad's happened to us. But then when you have autism, there's actually a more of a, it's just very common for them to have something that they obsess about, that they are perseverating over. And I wonder if you have any ideas or so like directions as you go when you have somebody who is kind of like, I don't know, who really is more perseverating over things that happen, and when you're trying to help them to kind of move forward, when that is kind of a part of their more nature to be perseverating than those who are more neurotypical.
Yeah, I do take that as I mean, they've already got that little thing that they're obsessed with. That's kind of part of the autism profile. But when it gets so much, I look at it as hypervigilance. Oftentimes, I look at the fact that there is trauma and they're hypervigilant. It's a symptom of their trauma, and that's their go-to thing already. But then it becomes so heightened, heightened hypervigilance.
That's good. Particularly with my client, he's in his 20s and he was just diagnosed. And so when something works for him, like he just got some ear things that kind of help calm him, like, so he doesn't hear as much noise, sharpness as we do. It makes him cry and get angry because he realized all these years, like, this has validated his struggle and he doesn't know what to do with the rest. So it's like, we're just processing it. At this point, I'm just giving him a point to just recognize that this is what's going on. But I just, I grieve with him because that's a long time to go, and his family's really a good family, but they really have not, the school system, I want to, get all mad about, and, just different therapists who dismiss their questioning of him having autism. And so he's, he grieves every time he recognizes he has a limitation that could have been addressed, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So
it's so sad.
It is. Those are the hardest ones to take, is sometimes when they're older, because I feel like those are, all those years that they were misunderstood.
And they just thought they were weird and they couldn't fit in.
And he was, bullied, and then nobody, the school didn't protect him at all. He was, struggled a lot with, he had other intellectual issues, like just learning disabilities, but they still didn't, they just ignored him, and it was just terrible. Like, and so he's, thankfully he has a good family that has been trying to fight for him and help him. But, but my goal is to kind of help him. How do I grieve this and then move on? That's how I see it, because it's,
yeah,
we're not done with the grieving part yet. And that's really where but I just thought, well, that's part of that. Being stuck is probably more prone when you have autism.
Yeah.
We can all get stuck in our old stuff, trauma. But I think with those who are on this, but I like that hypervigilance. I'll have to
really think that
protect that.
It's a heartbreaker, and then it is more intense when you have autism. Yeah. because they're already in that loop.
Right, that's like a natural part of their,
Yeah. So Gabrielle, can you make me the host? Thanks. Okay. There we go.
Okay, good to go.
All right. I think so. The last slide we did was internal versus external locus of control, right? How we're how so many folks with disabilities are defining themselves. Everything is based on how others see them, and they've been defined by their behaviors, by what they did wrong, by what's all their needs, right? By their instead of strengths. And then not being able, and this is where therapy is so important. As we said before, just to review, you know, not being able to even identify basic feelings, to check in with themselves, to be able to be centered and self-aware. And you know what? People can be very self-aware, but not feel validated in that. I think that's a better way to put it, that their feelings are valid. I would say that the term, I think I can't remember who I mentioned this to, it might have been you guys, when I finally figured out what gaslighting meant. It took me a while. Oh my gosh, this is what happens to people with disabilities, like so frequently, sometimes every day, right? Oh, that staff is really nice. What do you mean they were mean to you? They're not mean. Well, they were just really mean. Oh, no, they weren't being mean. Oh, that guy wasn't teasing you. He was just joking, but it hurt my feelings. Oh, no, that's not, he wasn't bullying you, right? So there's constant gaslighting, kind of taking advantage of that intellectual disability. When people with intellectual disabilities are really smart, they get it. But then they have been so gaslighted that they can't come back to even trust their internal instincts. No, that didn't happen to you. Everybody's very nice here.
one of the things I've learned that to tell people when they say, you know, like if you just said something to me that's just like that hurt my feelings, then I always felt like that was such a, people just don't take that seriously. Like they don't, just in general. And so I've taught my clients to start saying that, you know, when you said that, I felt disrespected.
That's great.
Because because people get that more, that, you know, because feelings make it sound like, well, Karen, you're just really, a wimp. And, like, you just get a little more sensitive. No, you disrespected me by saying this. And I think teaching maybe our clients what it means to feel, when do you feel disrespected, could be a way of really kind of recognizing that I don't like this. And what is disrespect? What does respect mean? It's that as a person that I'm validated. I'm I'm validated, that if I say I don't like this, that you take that into consideration. Sometimes we have to do things we don't like, but that's different than you disregarding me.
Yeah, exactly. Really good. That's a really good point. I showed you did I show you the Born This Way video? We looked at that, right? With the person, I'm sorry, I'm doing 3 of these Train the Trainer sets, and I need to write down what I've shown. Did you see Born This Way, the Down syndrome guy talking about? Okay, so this is really important in terms of identity, and we're talking about that sense of identity and the validation of feelings. So I'm going to show this, and then I'm going to show you this video. So I have this quote in my set of slides for 2 reasons, because I think Daisaku Ikeda is just one of the greatest philosophers alive today, and he's a Buddhist philosopher. He's written many books, and he says, ultimately, happiness rests on how you establish a solid sense of self or being. And I just love that, like solid sense of self. That's what we have to, not correct behavior, not compliance, but a solid sense of who you are, and that's kind of the positive identity approach that I'm encouraging people about. And then, so that's number one. I really respect him, and I think he really nailed it here. And then Nelson Mandela, you know, a great example of someone who had a lot of trauma, was in prison for 27 years, but has such a sense of self, came out of prison, changed the world, you know, I mean, changed South Africa, but really impacted the world in a very profound way. And rather than being shattered by that trauma, and he had a traumatic childhood as well. So rather than being shattered by that, because of that sense of self, of who he was and what his purpose was, you know, just came out stronger than ever and charged forward, like amazingly. So that's why I have this here. And let me show this. I believe that as therapists, you know, and training therapists, to me, the most critical pieces for folks with disabilities is that, you know, they have this big sense of who I am not, what I am not, what I can't do, what I don't do, what I'm not able to do, because they've heard it their whole life. And that's how they've defined themselves, that and what their bad behaviors are in many cases. But to build up who they are with that positive sense of self is so critical, you know. And in so many cases, right, we talked about the narrative piece where they're the hero of their own story, which they truly are. I mean, just, I don't know if I could ever have withstood, you know, just that exclusion and the bullying and just the tough stuff. And we showed the bullying from the Love on the Spectrum video. And I think that's really impactful to show you how even people with the most support in the world have this trauma from bullying. And now I'm going to show this video from Born This Way. I get a lot out of these, you know, these reality shows with people with disabilities, because they have these moments where they're just talking about what they've been through, and it's so genuine and so moving. Okay, I'm trying to, okay, get out of here. It always is an issue. All right. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't. Okay. Don't mind me. I'm going to end the show. I'm going to go back up here. Okay, here we go. Hopefully. Okay, can you see it and can you hear it?
Do you need a snack?
What's that?
Can you hear that? Okay, great.
Yes, I can't see.
You can't see it. All right, I'm gonna try.
Calendar.
Okay. We're gonna go back to square one. Yeah, that's my other screen. I really should just have one screen. That's because it's somehow sharing the wrong screen. Okay. Now can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, you should.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Do you need a snack?
What's that?
I don't like you. I'm good.
Are you sure?
I'm good.
Come
Okay.
on, dude, man up.
It's fine, don't worry. Then we can talk something else. So Steven, so you don't have a girlfriend, right?
Nope.
Who's your type?
My type? Well, I do like smart girls.
Okay.
Would like someone who doesn't have a disability. So like Emma Watson.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why you don't want the girls without Down syndrome?
How can I put you this politely to you? When it comes to girls and dating, kind of go for the typical.
If you are dating someone without Down syndrome, it means that you hurt somebody's feelings. It's called assaulting people.
I'm not insulting anybody. What is this, like a therapy session?
No.
Are you trying to hypnotize me or something?
No. Like for example, Angel and I were strangers. And we went to Special Olympics. Then after that, me and him were girlfriend and boyfriend. And he's the one day proposed to me.
People with disabilities are have a different communication than others, and I feel like sometimes I get frustrated when the conversation kind of is one-sided.
You're acting like a grandma from the 50s.
I'm not your grandma.
First, there was rude.
Like a grandma,
It does not
my
exist.
grandma. Because you come off as this cutie two-shoes kind of gal.
I didn't say that. I tried to ask you
That's not.
the question, why you don't want to date with some of the girls who without a Down syndrome?
It's just how I look at things, how I actually react to people. Can I have some help over here?
Sure thing.
Christina's trying to ask me something that I kind of feeling a little uncomfortable with.
Okay. All right. What's up?
When it comes to girls, kind of go for the typical.
But are you feeling like you're kind of limiting who you might want to be pursuing based on the fact that you don't want to date somebody who might have a disability?
It's kind of just been my thing ever since growing up. Growing up, I kind of felt like my disability was more of a curse as opposed to just accepting it.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of felt hidden from it.
Okay, so you were kind of trying to maybe deny that part of yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I felt when I was growing up. Yeah.
That's hard.
I just kind of wanted to be somebody else rather than myself.
Yeah. There's a part of you has some things that you're struggling with. Parts of your identity that you're still trying to cope with.
Yeah.
Does that sound right? And that's hard work. And I think that you might be going through a lot of that hard work right now.
I feel that you are feeling down. It's okay to be sad, but I'm trying to help.
Bottom line, Christina, you want your friend to be happy.
Yes.
Right?
You can make your life anything you want.
I just want to feel love.
So. Okay. I love that because it's about identity. And he says it so well. I mean, he shares that struggle so honestly. And that's a nice example of why we want to do identity work. And why this is really front and center of the issues.
How well his friend really confronted that. I think so often there's been this misnomer that, if you have some kind of intellectual disability, that somehow you don't understand any dynamics about anything, or that you just kind of going along for the ride, so to speak, but we know, and she just really had the ability to push him. And of course that annoyed him at first, but it really kind of she got to the core. It was great when he said, "Is this a therapy session?" I was like, "You go, girl," because that's really she was pushing him, and that was exceptional.
I know. I just love that so much. And then that staff, so skilled. so skilled. Like, where do we find her? Yeah, she really did. She pushed him. And then the other guy, he was like a little bit lost, but wanted to be supportive, and then, but didn't want him to be mean to his girlfriend. And then, okay, I want to go out with Emma Thompson. All right, that's okay. You and the rest of the world, that's fine. But it's not going to happen. So I just love showing that, because it's okay. It's a very intimate glimpse into the struggle with identity.
I think it's such a reflection of like, which I think that's what she was challenging him in, is that I guess my thought was, well, when you say that you only want to date people who are not have disabilities, what do you think of yourself? Because that's just like, to me, if you're not willing, it's almost like then you must be, how do you feel about yourself? Or do you just want to, for some people it'd be like, I know somebody else could take care of me better, or they can work, I don't have to work through relationship problems sometimes, but I just think, you're worth it. You're worth like knowing, people knowing you the way you are and accepting you as you, because it's a you.
Exactly. I think it's so important, and the way it came out was so great. Yeah. And that acceptance is so crucial. And the real core, as you're saying, Karen, is that lack of self-acceptance. All right. So back to screen 2. I hope I'm on the right screen. Okay, do you see my healing center? Yay. So now you can take these slides out. This is where I kind of share some of the work I've done through the years. But at the Arc of Baltimore, we had a healing center, and we did group work. And I have found group work, when you can do it, to be really, really effective. And I think I shared, I'm doing group work on Zoom now with 3 groups. And it's logistically a lot easier than when I tried to get people together. I mean, here we had the support of the agency, and we did it with folks who weren't working. But in fact, all of the folks weren't working, and many of them had skills, but just had so much trauma going on that they didn't just feel brave enough or strong enough to do it. And we did music therapy, we did group work, we did art projects. We can't say art therapy because we didn't have a certified art therapist, but we had a certified music therapist. So we did a lot of art projects. We focused on trauma, and then the positive identity development and that sense of self, and then finding mission and purpose, where we help people to kind of figure out where they made a difference, where they could have impact. We made some dishes for local food kitchens. We did different things that were contributive. And here's an example of the grief work we did. So this woman had a lot of trauma. She had watched her stepfather stab and kill her mother when she was 13 in Baltimore City. Very traumatic. You might remember it from my training. And what we thought we would be really working on and processing that trauma and the trauma piece, where we gave everybody some individual supports, and then we worked in group as well. But she was a very, very angry person, never smiled. And we found out, well, she actually had lost the love of her life, which was another woman in the group home that she had been in. And sadly, that woman had choked at dinner and died. And Elena blamed herself because she had told her that she had to eat because the woman wasn't eating. And then she just stuffed a bunch of food in her mouth when Elena was saying, you got to eat, you got to eat. And then the woman choked. So how horrible Elena felt, she killed her. So she had never opened up about it. She had just taken this real deep grief and all tangled up in self-hate, where she blamed herself for her death, right? How complex. And it always kills me where people say folks with disabilities, Karen, like you were saying earlier, oh, they're so simple. Oh, you know, they're just going with the flow. Oh, hell no. They're more complicated. It's more complex because there's more layers of trauma. There's not more, I mean, there's lots of people with lots of trauma, but you can bet on trauma. You can assume trauma and layers of it, and it's very complex. It's very complex. And so we were able to really help Elena, and we work with her individually, but then we really made the difference was in group, where the other group members all told her that she wasn't responsible for the death. And actually everybody lined up and gave her a hug. And it was just so beautiful. And then she did the grief work where we were decorating memory boxes and putting a message in the box for the people that everybody lost. And they would talk about it, and then we made little videos of it. And she gave me permission to share hers.
Yes.
I made this for my roommate, Mary. I missed her and I love her.
Oh, good job, man.
And I also put a message in there.
Okay.
Dear roommate, I miss you and I love you.
Good job, man.
Thank you.
That always moves me so much. And we never saw her smile before she processed that and forgave herself. We never saw her smile. And she was smiling a lot, and she wouldn't sing. We had karaoke time with our music therapy. She refused to sing. After she did all that, we could not get the mic out of her hand. She would just like dominate. We'd be like, okay, it's other people's turn now. And she would sing and sing and sing like a bird set free.
That's why sometimes when people are quiet or, you know, reserved, it can be this assumption that, oh, they're just quiet and reserved. But sometimes, you know, it's like we just have to untangle something for them and help them to be, you know, process something that's been hard.
So true. Sometimes that's the core of it. Good point. And then I don't know how many of you do EMDR, but I have found I'm a big proponent of EMDR. I've done it for 20 years with folks, and I've just found it to be super successful and effective because it doesn't depend on verbal. You know, it's not like a cognitive behavioral approach where you have to identify goals and strategies. It's that internal processing. I've also done a lot. For years, I did a lot of hypnosis. And people would say, oh, you can't do hypnosis with disabilities. Well, back then they were saying you can't do therapy with people with disabilities, right? Oh, you can't do hypnosis with people with disabilities. Yes, you can. And I did I called it guided imagery. And it was actually, I helped people resolve a lot of things. But then when I learned EMDR, I found that it was kind of similar processing on that deep level, but it was more efficient and more effective. And I felt like I was better trained because I only had like one little short training in hypnosis. But the EMDR was pretty thorough, that training. So I felt kind of more equipped. So I just transitioned to mainly doing EMDR, but you know, all of it. Doing something right below that conscious level or something that's more intuitive, I think is very effective with folks with IDD. So we did a study, and there was a woman working on her dissertation, Dr. Lynn Bueller, who wanted to do her dissertation on doing EMDR with folks with intellectual disabilities. And she found me, and because she said, I'm looking and looking, and you're the only person I can find who does EMDR with people with disabilities. Well, basically, so few people were doing any kind of therapy with people with disabilities, right? So I was able to identify 8 people at the ARC Baltimore, where I was the clinical director at the time, with severe trauma and active PTSD symptoms. And we did the EMDR on all 8 of them. She did it. I say we, I didn't do the work. I just kind of made it happen, right? I just talked everyone into it. And it was amazing because every single one of them no longer had active symptoms of PTSD. And a lot of the folks had behavioral issues and had behavior plans for their behavioral issues, but all of that was no longer needed after and she did 9 months of it. And then she was kind. She was very kind, and she offered to continue and to do it for free for folks, until she got set up with those who were on Medicare and did some. So some people agreed to do it, others didn't. This one woman, she was abandoned as a child. She had PTSD. She would cry every day, and sometimes she would run off and ran into the road all the time. And she was hit by a car 3 separate times when I first met her. Like 2, actually 2, and then while I knew her 1 time. But so we got her into the work, and she totally changed. She stopped crying. She had fibroid tumors and wouldn't let anybody touch her. Because she was so traumatized, she wouldn't go to doctors. She didn't want anyone near her. But then after the EMDR, she was willing to go to the doctor. She had the teeth removed and was so much more comfortable. She also had problems with her feet. She had her feet operated on. I mean, she's doing so well. She went on a trip, which she never would have done before. Really opened up her life. Really opened up. And then she told them all that she didn't want to work anymore. She wanted to retire because she was older, and made them all let her retire. She's retired now. Another woman used to make a lot of accusations, and I believe that she would have flashbacks because she'd be with somebody and she'd then say he raped her, right? Or he touched her. And she had this history of sexual abuse, severe and horrible. And she would look at you with her hair down in front of her face, kind of peer out, and just very, very suspicious of everyone. And one time she was so sure she was raped that she convinced the police, even though we told the police that she has this pattern and she has PTSD, and they didn't believe us. They believed her because she was so convinced. And then 2 weeks later, this is what would always happen. A couple of weeks later, she'd say, I think it didn't happen. Like almost like, she was waking up. She really had severe flashbacks and believed it until she kind of processed it, and then would get to the point where it's like, oh, that didn't happen, right? And she stopped making accusations. She cut her hair short. She went to the hairdresser with her staff and said, cut it short and dye it red. She's short, bright red hair, and she just really transformed herself after the EMDR. And she was one of the people that said, the first person kept up with it and is still getting it now, like 9 years later. But she just said, I'm good now. And she's totally different. It's amazing. She really resolves stuff. We saw this one guy who was very abused and lived in a very poor area, and also had an abusive dad. And he was very aggressive. He would always think someone was picking on him, and he would start fights, but people weren't, or they would just say something innocent. And, he was so easily triggered. It was all just trauma. And he was about to be fired from his job on a crew. And after the EMDR, he settled down. He is still on that crew now and never fought again on the crew. Didn't need his behavior plan after a couple of years. He's doing really well. Sadly, he was living with a housemate that he really loved, and it was the housemate's house. And the housemate, I just found out, passed away from COVID. So he just went through a little bit difficult of a transition, but he did okay with it. Didn't become aggressive again, kind of made the transition. And he's another one who just said, I'm good. After the first year of EMDR, he was like, I'm good. I feel better now. And he just kind of went about his life after that. And then the fourth guy, he was really paralyzed by the death of his mother. He had lived his whole life with his mother and very close to her, and was also had a lot of PTSD from being bullied. But the death of his mom just really destroyed him. And, you know, he was really upset. And now he does wood carvings. So we didn't even know he had this incredible gift, and he had went to a little woodwork class in high school and had started doing it, and then really shut down everything in his life once his mom died. And after the EMDR, picked up some wood and got his staff to take him to the art place and got everything he needed and started carving these wonderful animal figures. It's amazing. Like, he's really talented. And I say here, I have to change this because he had a girlfriend for about a minute. That didn't quite work out, you know, easy come, easy go. And, but he really changed his view of himself. He talks very differently about himself. He used to talk about himself as just, you know, I'm an orphan. I'm the only one left. He had a cousin. He had a brother, and the brother died. So he was, oh, I'm the only one left, and just so depressed. And then now when you sit with him and talk with him, because he continued with the therapy also, he's someone who continued. When you sit with him and talk with him, he's just showing you his artwork, and he has pet rats, which is but he loves them. And, you know, showing you pictures on his phone of his rats. Cute things to do. I know. Whatever, right? But just coming out of that shell and opening up. I've done EMDR with so many different folks with disabilities. I've done it with people who use minimal words. There was one woman, and she was in her house, and somebody came into the bathroom. She was in the bathroom, broke into the house, and molested her.
Wow.
And
Terrible.
horrible. And she didn't use very many words, almost none. And she kept saying she had stomach aches, and so we associated, you know, the doctor couldn't find anything wrong, and we associated the stomach aches with the molestation. So every time she said she had a stomach ache or was complaining, we did EMDR. So I did EMDR with her, and I knew the trauma, so I was able to process it. I was also able to put positive, they call it positive installations, where you really build up their sense of themselves as being a strong person and being capable and competent. So I did the series with her, knowing what her trauma was and walking her through it, similar to the protocol they use with young children. And she felt better. Those stomach aches went away. And then when they came up again, she would ask to see me. She would ask for Karen. And she couldn't really articulate much, but she would say, tummy hurts, tummy better.
Yay.
I know. It was really profound for me, you know, because I was like, wow, there's so much in there. There's so much in there, and there's so much we can do if we get the right tools to really help. And in that case, we knew what the trauma was. But I don't think you even need that, really. You need to just process. And a lot of times people will do it. So with the EMDR, you know, it's usually eye movement. Do you guys know about it? Yeah, you all know, right? So I cannot do the eye movement with most folks with disabilities. It's very tough. So what I do are the buzzers. The neurotech company has buzzers, and I have them, and they buzz, you know, it's bilateral stimulation. So it'll buzz back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I have folks use the buzzers, or I have them put their hands on their knees and I tap their hands back and forth. That's been really helpful. So I find the sensory ones to be a little bit better. Also, I have headphones from the neurotech company, and that beep back and forth. Beep, 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 beep. I've used those as well. Most people, when I do everything for them, most people choose the buzzers or the tapping. A lot of them, like I have a couple of people say, "You going to tap? We're going to do the tapping." And what I've been doing now with some people on Zoom, those that I have on Zoom, I'm looking for it. Where is it? Oh my goodness. What happened to I can't find it. Must have fallen down. I have a little pen that's a panda. Oh, here it is. So this is what I've been doing on Zoom for lack of better technique. Someone gave me some technology that's a dot back and forth, but I haven't been able to use it. I use this little panda. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And they follow the panda because it's kind of bright and you can see it. And it's actually been somewhat effective. So I show it the panda for people that like that little thing. And then for older people that don't want a little baby thing, the other side. Like an ice cream cone. So I've been doing it on Zoom, been doing it. And there are protocols for that. So I have to say, this is my go-to in terms of me. But in terms of training therapists and for you guys who are going to do training, just get people to do what they do, and then they'll modify it as they go along. This isn't like some, people are already trained. So do what you do. And then on my website, so I think we'll go over some of the materials I have when we get back. Maybe we take a 10-minute break now, and then I'm going to go over some of the materials that you can also tell people to use. And my, little surprise that I have just from me. I wish I could share it with you, but I don't have it yet, but hopefully it's coming for tools for you. Okay. So be back soon. Okay, I'm assuming everyone's back. And from recovery to happiness, you guys probably know Martin Seligman's positive psychology stuff. And so the book Flourish, he has 5 levels of happiness. He started off with 3, and then he added 2. And I had to change everything. I had to change my book at the last minute. I had to change my slides. But so he says there's 5 levels now. And that was great because it's really important. He added positive relationships and achievement, which are so true, right? And he wrote Learned Optimism, a wonderful book, which really encourages people to be optimists. I love that book. And gratitude journaling, which is really wonderful and something I do. And it's funny how even on a bad day, you can find some good things. I have learned that in the last year when I've been stricter with myself on gratitude journaling. And for some of the folks that I work with who write, I've encouraged them to do that. Some folks don't, some people do, right? It's one more tool. But so a lot of Seligman's stuff is very helpful. On his website, www.authentichappiness.com, he has this strengths-based assessment where you can assess your strengths. And I know one organization, they used to be in Virginia, but then Reach took over. START, I don't know if anyone has ever encountered them, but they do crisis work and prevention work with people with disabilities. And they will have everybody do a strengths assessment before they do any work at all. They have everyone do it before they come to a conference. They do it with the folks they support. It's really wonderful. So I took his 5 levels of happiness and I created a happiness assessment. So we'll go through the 5 levels first, and then I'm going to show you my website where you can get lots and lots of stuff, just fun stuff, which you may or may not want to use. But pleasure is passive happiness, right? That's actually the least effective. Engagement, positive relationships, achievements, and meaning and purpose. So he says if you're in your leisure time, you have a higher level of pleasure and a lower level of engagement, like things you're active in, you're less happy than people that have more engagement, like whatever they're actively playing with. versus just sitting and having passive pleasure is a passive activity like watching TV or eating something you like versus playing basketball, gardening, cooking, video games even. He talks about gaming as actually a source of happiness. There's a wonderful book that I really love called Play by Stuart Brown. And he talks about how your brain neurologically wires differently when you play, and that it's very therapeutic to play, which made me happy because I love to play. And positive relationships. This is a theme of this training, right? That these relationships are so important, and that probably the biggest problem in the world of disability is isolation. So helping our folks as we work with them to, get those social skills, to do role plays about making contact with people, to just get what they need to really start having some unpaid relationships. What happens in the field that kind of makes me crazy is we put so much of our effort and our training into the staff is the relationship, which is great. Like it's a step forward from where we were, which was just controlling people. So it's better than that. But it's kind of like they're the caregiver and you have to connect with them and do this. But the staff become the be all and the end all, which is not good, right? Because staff quit. There's a 45% turnover rate right now during COVID in the direct care staff working with people with disabilities, 45%. It was 40, so it was already really high nationwide. Where I came from, it was 24%. And they used to say, well, we're so much less than the national, but our staff were always leaving. It wasn't good. I went to one agency where they really treasured the staff. And they were so good to the staff, and their turnover was 4%. So I think how we treat the staff is a big deal. But, back to the relationship piece, if we focus all the energy on developing those relationships with staff and teaching staff to be the be all and the end all, rather than to be a coach that help them to create other relationships, we really lose out because people need to have peer relationships. They need boyfriends, girlfriends, friends, like all humans, and not to be so isolated. Achievements. So in our field, we are often talking about goals, and we're always like, oh, what's your goal? What are you? And we have lists of goals and goals that they're working on. The staff are assigned working on goals with them. They have to have data on the goals, but we don't actually celebrate achievements. We don't celebrate when they actually did learn to fix their own cereal. We don't celebrate when they didn't put a hole in the wall for 6 months. Let's celebrate. So we lower our standards a little. That's a good thing. And then meaning and purpose, which speaks for itself. And Seligman writes a lot about that. And, Viktor Frankl's book I found so riveting, Man's Search for Meaning. I've read it like maybe 10 times. I love that book so much, right? You guys know it. So, and it applies to the world of disabilities, with people need to have that sense of purpose and meaning in their life. And that's what creates survival. That's what enables them to survive and to thrive, is that sense of meaning and purpose. And so I'm going to show you the assessment that I use. We use it in behavior plans. Okay, I'll stop sharing and start again. Let's see. So we use this assessment, and those are the slides. Did I make changes? Huh. Okay, so in the behavior plans, we include the happiness assessment, but I have found that it's also a nice tool in therapy. And I'm going to show tools, where to find them. Okay. Can you see that my face here? Okay. So I work for a clinic. I cannot stand looking at myself. I can't stand these pictures. Oh, well. So, but a very nice guy at the clinic set up the website, and I have deep appreciation for that. Because it's way better than anything I could have done. It's really nice. But here's the website. It's KarenHarvey.org. And then you go to About. I couldn't find it. I had to call the guy in the office just now during our break to find where the materials were. That's how often I go to it. They're at the very bottom when you go to About. And here you can download all these materials. So here's the happiness assessment. I have a happiness assessment and procedure for staff where we help the staff to do more self-care and explore their own happiness because staff need help, right? It's a hard job. But here's the happiness assessment for folks with disabilities. So very simple stuff, but you'd be surprised how many people don't know what they like and don't know who they are, right? So we just say what they like on every level. Who are their positive relationships, their achievement, the meaning in their life, you know, and we go and add up with, I know I make a difference in the world because. So you can download this happiness assessment and work with them and do it as a fun session. And then you can have a happiness procedure that you can develop with them. Like, okay, how am I going to follow my bliss? What am I going to do to work on my happiness? And that is a fun thing to do. Now, okay, go back. Oops, okay. Oh, I just knocked myself out of there. Wrong thing to do. That's okay. I'm going to go back to the website. Okay. So there, my book To Celebrate Me, that one is where it's nice in the initial sessions. It's an autobiography, very simple. Again, this stuff is very simple, but it gives structure to the therapist. You know, it gives the therapist something to do, a therapist that may not feel as comfortable, you know, with using or trying different techniques right away. You can start with the workbooks, and the workbooks are designed to really give that positive sense of identity. You know, this is an autobiography about me. I celebrate me. Here's a picture of myself, you know, colors, food, memories, when I'm proudest, the hardest thing I ever had to overcome, the thing I'm proudest of overcoming. So it's a way you can really get to know this person. And then they can take this book. I usually make copies of it. And, you know, then they can put it in a folder, or you can get a folder, different colored folders that they can make the original and take it home and show it to people, introduce people about who they are, you know, the words in my favorite song, the words I like the most, you know, really simple stuff, but it says who they are, what I like in a friend and who my friends are, my favorite thing to do, you know, what I'm happiest about my future. So it's pretty upbeat, but it also talks about what they've been through, what they're proud of overcoming. Okay. And then the goodbye book. Maybe if I go back to this. Okay, never mind. Okay. The goodbye book is the one that I've talked about for grief and loss. And this one I have used for years and years and years. And not only is it a tool for dealing with the grief and loss, it's also helps them favorite memories, you know, basic stuff, the best thing person ever did for me, the things that I like the most about the person. But then we go into building that sense of self again, that identity, the things that this person liked best about me were. And, you know, they write it in or you write it in for them if they don't write. And each couple of blurbs can be something you process and do in therapy, and then do a few more your next session. Like you can stretch it out as one of your go-to tools because it's nice and concrete. And then when you're done, they have that. So I've done this with a lot with folks, you know, with parents and the loss of parents. One thing I've always remembered, favorite thing they used to say, this is how I feel about this person now. They make a picture or they can write there. You know, really simple stuff, nothing too elaborate. But, oh, now where, how do I, okay.
And Karen, you can send those things can be like sent to a client or emailed to them so that they, somebody, if they don't download things, that they can have a copy of it, because there's something about writing it out or touching it that is different than like speaking it or, keyboarding it, I should say.
Yeah.
Being able to put something in, and especially.
Yeah, I mean, you can, if we're still doing teletherapy, you can even snail mail, you know, if people don't have a lot of technology or access to it. Yeah, there is something about writing it out that's really wonderful. And there are a number of folks that I work with that don't write, particularly the older folks who weren't taught to write. But the other people, we write it. Some people just, you spell everything out for them and they write it out. It's important to them to write it, and you tell them how to spell each thing and help and work them through that. And that's really nice. And my book about making a difference, my healing workbook, that's where we process the trauma. Story of a brave person who's been through a lot and is a survivor. This name of the person is, and it goes through my picture. We'll often have the pictures. Here's the strong points that help me cope. Been through some bad things. I survived. Here's how I did it. Like reframing them from victim to survivor. Here's how I can calm myself down and cope with these things. Here where you have your coping skills. Some things that bring me joy. Here's what I need to feel everything's okay, or I am cool and things are safe. And we identify what folks need. People that mean a lot to me, how I keep in touch with them. Some things I want to do in my life. Action plan to move forward, write good parts about my life, what I'm most proud of about myself. I'm a survivor. This is what I want to tell the world. They write it out and sign it. And that's their book. So that one, that was a very sweet story. I did that with somebody who had been through horrible abuse, and her mother was a drug addict and had prostituted her out when she was young. And then she was put in foster care and just had one horrific situation after another. And we were doing the other workbooks that I had. And she's like, let's do one about everything I've been through. Let's do one about all the bad stuff. And so we kind of wrote this together and did this together. This one's really special to me, as we talked about what she would like to say and write about. Okay. Let's see. There's one for families, if you do any family work, like a family identity to celebrate the family. Names of the family, everybody counts. Here's where we live, what we do, the family activities, to build up that sense of family identity. My latest one, book, Coping with COVID. Yikes, right? Here's how I feel about COVID. Believe it or not, there are some good things that have come out of it. The best thing was things I don't like, what I don't like the most, what I wish I could change. So my friend who's a therapist asked me to do a book about COVID, and she's been using them. It's a short one. And then the other thing she asked me to do, she said a lot of her folks need to affirm their spirituality and what they believe in. And she asked me to do something about what people believe in their spirituality. So I designed my book of hope. And when I'm down, here's things that are making me feel better. Here's what thoughts that cheer me up. The best thing anyone ever told me that makes me feel better. Some things I need to remember. What gives me hope? And then what I look forward to in the future, a belief in my heart that always helps. What I like best about the way I see things. If someone else is down, this is what I tell them. The thing I'm most proud about. Every day I keep going because I know the best part of my life is, and then, oops, that doesn't look too good, does it? Oh, well. Signed. And then here's another sheet, the author. You don't need that last sheet. And that was the last one that I did. So they're really simple things that can just get you jump started. And you can share them, if you do a training for folks on how to do therapy with folks, you can say, here, start with this. It's a nice, simple tool that can jumpstart you in working with this person. You can, set up your rapport with the book To Celebrate Me. You can do the grief counseling with the Goodbye book. And then you can do some trauma work with the book about recovery and then the book about hope, and those two together. So here's just like throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall, see what sticks. And you can just share these with people. It's all free. And the books are not free, but important point, the NADD published the Positive Identity book, but they didn't print enough. So it's like at a ridiculous price on Amazon. But if you go to NADD, the National Association of the Dually Diagnosed, and you go to their website and you go to their bookstore and you go to bestsellers, it's Positive Identity Development is there. So it's a lot cheaper. And then the other one's on Amazon for like a normal price. And you can also get that through AAIDD. And then the good news is that my third book is coming out this year. I thought they may have given up on it. I was so freaked out because they kept not coming back to me. And I thought, oh, they just decided not to publish it. And that one is specifically for therapists. This is my life's mission, right? Please do therapy with people with disabilities. Basically, it's like, do it. That's the whole book. And it has the materials and it has something. I'm a Buddhist and I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And I went on a little trip to Japan a couple of years ago, and I was chanting in this beautiful place called the Hall of the Vow, where people come from all over and they chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo from all different countries. And you make your vow there, like what you want to do with your life. It's kind of a cool spiritual thing. So I went there and I was chanting, and it was like came to me to stop writing about people with disabilities and start writing for them. And so I went home and I wrote this series called Guidelines for Getting Through It. And that's going to be in the third book directly for people. So, and it's set up so you can read the chapter in a therapy session, and then it has discussion questions. And it's about bullying, losing a job, losing a girlfriend or boyfriend, all the tough stuff in life that happens more frequently with folks with disabilities. And so I'm so excited. So that should be coming out. Yay. And then then I'm on the road. I'm on the path. I'm not giving up. I want to do more for families now. But we'll see. We'll see. At least I know that will be hopefully, my hope is, we don't know, it might really not be that good. Believe me, it's not perfect. But at least it's another set of materials, and it references the materials on my website. So I talk a lot about those workbooks. It's going to be not a long book. It's a light little thing, but it will reference those materials. And then you'll have the whole series of chapters directly for people with disabilities, has dealing with death of a parent, that kind of is all the tough stuff where you read they're kind of like stories, social stories in a way, but stories about someone with a poem and then discussion questions. Designed to be used in therapy. So no one will ever say, I don't know what to do. We can just give them the book.
Do you know when that's coming out? Like a time frame?
Well, they said the end of 2020, so that didn't go too well. And then they asked me to go to the reception in June, but I think it might be to promote the other book. So I'm hoping by the end of this year. I hate to be too optimistic because it's been, COVID shut it all down, right? But hopefully that'll be out there. And if anyone wants to, you can email me. And if you want the guidelines to getting through it, I can just share it with you. If you get to that point with someone and you think, oh, this would be really good. But the workbooks in the meantime, and our big message for training therapists is you already know how to do therapy. You've been trained, you are a professional, you are a clinician. This is a cultural competency. This is not a specialty. And there's a serious difference.
Yes.
Yeah. This is not like saying, well, addiction. Yes, I need to know how to do addiction work. No, this is not that.
I appreciate when you were talking about the EMDR, because I think that it sounds so like it would be effective, but I'm not trained in that. And that's okay. But it's really to like recognize, okay, you are trained in EMDR. Well, here's another area or population that you probably haven't considered, versus it being like, because I do disabilities, I need to be trained and be all things, which that's not realistic. More realistic that, hey, this training in EMDR, which is extensive. It's like, so now you can, tweak it or learn how to use it with this population.
Exactly. And that goes to everything. So I talk about EMDR because it's my go-to therapy, but it's all your tools in your tool chest, right? It's everything you've got. You use it and you can modify it. And each person responds differently, as we know, because they're human. But you'll hit on something that works with somebody and it'll be great. And then you find this other thing isn't really doing it. But it's like with all your folks.
Right.
And I have, like I said, I've done guided imageries that have been very successful. And I have to say, and Karen, I think I've been hearing you say the same thing. Folks just need to be listened to and validated. Like, this is not rocket science. Yes. I mean, you could be you're starting out as a clinician and just listen, and you're going to make a difference. You don't need to be that sophisticated or have so many tools in your tool chest. You just to do some good active listening and validating. I think the validating is such a big piece. Anybody can do that.
Some of the things I like to do is, or probably because of my background with children, is that I like to use books.
Yeah.
Like, even though this is what I found, and I don't know if Karen, if you would agree, but I found that most people who have an intellectual disability, I'm not using this with adults who have, are high functioning autism, because that's different. That's a different thing. But that they're not offended when I bring out a book that it says that's really like, if you look at the ages for like a 3 or 5-year-old. And I find that, but somehow it's a great opportunity. It just starts conversation because it has pretty colors and pretty things. And so sometimes that can really bring something out. Like I have this, and so I always like put my treatment plan off in bibliotherapy, because I'm learning to do it more on Zoom, because it's a little bit more of a complication if I make sure that I'm not mirrored. So like when I'm looking at the screen now, I can actually read it. That's kind of really helpful because if
Oh,
it's,
wow.
I cannot read, backwards. I can read upside down, but I can't read backwards. So,
Me neither.
and like I have stories like this is one of my favorite books. I learned. I'm trying to make sure you can see the screen. I keep going away. Woo, there we go. Karen's learning. And this is a great book in general because it's not really a trauma. It's not saying like, it's not talking about like physical abuse or sexual abuse or abandonment. It's saying something bad. You can just see his face, like, or the little light bubble. It's like, it's not good. And that's one of those things that I use. And it's like, it kind of like, and he goes through and he has a real nice therapist. I have a couple other books that are like that. They have therapists in the book, which is kind of fun, but, and I'm just trying to learn to use, using them. And I recognize, I say this in all respect and not and any just not disrespecting anyone. But when I learn somebody has an intellectual disability, and then if I can read them this story and they're excited about it, that verifies what I know about disabilities. I mean, that they really, because if I show this story to a 13-year-old, they'd be so offended. They'd be like, I'm 13. What are you talking about? Why would you show me this kid story? But because this really is emotionally addressing things that the way they feel, it really, it kind of goes to what they need. So I have a few of those books that I have, and I brought them home from my office just so that I can always, if I want, whenever I want to, they're just available. And that's just something,
Awesome.
I just looked on Amazon. It wasn't any, big research plan. It was just over the years, just kind of like some work better than others. And then I found some in a closet at the office and, that kind of stuff. But I feel like, just having a book and just like most kids, like I say this, not disrespecting them if they're adults, but mostly just like children, they need repetition. So repetition of the book is not like where some, for us, we'd be like, I read that book. No, like just like children, they enjoy the repetition, and that really affirms, and it actually is creating something in their neural pathways to recognize those things. And if I could find my favorite book or one of my favorites, it's just, you mentioned, there's like a mantra series out there, and it's like, mine is like, it's going to be okay, or it's all right. And it's like, it's a children's book. It works good with kids, but it also works great with adults because first of all, it's helped me too. Like, it's kind of like, it helps you like, okay, this didn't go well. I'm still going to be okay. And then it kind of shows you, well, I could do this, or I could do that, or I could do that. And I think sometimes that's what, not having their problem solving skills are not encouraged to be used that often, especially if they have lower, they are more limited and because of their disability. And I think it's just a great opportunity to like say, well, what can you do differently? What could be an option if this happened to you? And sometimes, because we all identify with stories, most people enjoy stories, like, and if it's about a bear or it's about a person, they recognize, oh, this should happen, or oh, I would be angry then, or that, but they can use that, internalizes maybe, and often it can bring a communication of, well, I was angry the other day because this happened, and that begins it. And so sometimes it's like it's just getting them started.
I love that. That's a great idea. My goal, my dream, one of my big dreams is to write books for people with disabilities. I wrote a mystery series. Oh, that's great.
I love it.
And get published. I love that. I can handle it. Yeah. Bibliotherapy.
Sometimes you can find videos like that too. I haven't been I haven't researched. I'm not as motivated, to be honest.
I find all those books on YouTube, and it makes it so much easier with.
Oh, they're on. I haven't even gone that far to look to see.
No, so that's like a whole series, and I find those books on YouTube and love using it for like a variety of things.
So you
don't have to buy it.
This series, you mean? You talking about this series? That's super cool.
Does someone read it?
Yeah, somebody reads it, and so I can stop. So I like that I can handle it for kids with autism or other challenges, because they like can start having that mantra of I can handle it, and then you can follow it up with a game like operation, and like operation is like the little sensory noise. And so then you can practice with them in that game thing of saying like I can handle it, and then you can work on changing that mantra they have, and they can even practice that before school.
It's nice. I like
That's
that.
fun.
Thank you. Cool. Yeah, like we said, do what you do and just, adapt. Like we do for all of our folks. Like you have to adapt some way or another for everybody.
I think one thing to really like talk about and educate therapists on though would be sensory issues and OT or other ways.
Yes.
Because I find that like, yes, I know about books, like I can handle it, but it wasn't until I began, because I'm writing a book right now about different interventions for a variety of things. And it wasn't until I began to research like bath time challenges or things like that that I realized how much of it comes down to sensory, and trying to work with parents on that and on understanding that.
Yeah, good for you.
Thanks,
if you have any publishing tips, email me and let me know some, please.
Yeah, you just find these niche groups, and that's how you get like I was determined not to self-publish. So if you can find like maybe the OT, some of these niche groups and people that put on conferences also have little small publishing companies. And that's what I found. That was very helpful for me.
Thanks, Mary, for mentioning that, because that was one of those things I had listed on my list is the whole issue of sensory processing and autism, which I feel like it's a minority of therapists who are aware of those issues.
Right.
Actually, they kind of only deal with the cognitive part kind of, and recognizing, like books like Out of Sync and things like that can be, and learning how to use tools that, just have in teaching parents, well, I'm not an OT therapist. I don't pretend to be one, but at the same time, you can get a book and the book can show you things. If it works, then, go for it. Or you can go get them trained. You can go get an assessment if it's really an issue. But I think some of those things can be applicable for all of us, because it's just like, it's a way of calming. It's a way of recognizing, but it's also a way of having compassion on our population who really struggles with these sensory things that to some of us can be oblivious if we're not really, not us in this room, but like, I mean, like, as a therapist, sometimes we're just not thinking about that noise affects us, or that, different things can affect one of our, affect somebody, just the way that, you were talking about EMDR, where EMDR is like, wow, look at it, it's magic. It's like, you can see significant progress. Well, and sometimes getting the right, getting something to minimize the noise in their ears, or understanding that sensitivity, understanding, clothing, etc., or like our showers worse than baths, those kind of things can really make, like a world of difference in terms of how they feel. And sometimes parents need that validation versus thinking that it's just like we're just like catering to them. Like, well, I just like all cotton. No, it's really, it's not like that. It's not like I just like pink or something. It's a real thing. And the more we can help them, they can be successful and sleep better, and actually not be irritable when it's just going to affect a lot of things.
Yeah, I would like to read your book. I think it's wonderful, bring in an OT trainer, because we know these sensory issues are really important, but these OT people, they've got brilliant stuff, right? They are figuring it out, the spoons, the bowls, you name it, they've got it all worked out. Clothing, and I just think we have a lot to learn from them. So I want to read your book, Mary.
It's 91 pages right now, so I just need a little bit more, but it's going to be all the different interventions that I've amassed for a variety of categories in a variety of multimodal ways. So it'll be really good, because over COVID, with switching to teletherapy, I realized I needed resources like that I Can Handle book, and I wanted to be able to look at something like abuse and have a variety of different things right at my fingertips without having to tailor it to each client and thinking, like, forgetting what I'd done before.
That's wonderful. Can't wait to read it.
Thank you. Hopefully it gets finished soon in the middle of launching a private practice, you know.
All right. You're really making lots of progress. That's great. So I would love to support in whatever way, free, anyone's endeavors, as if you can find ways to do some trainings within the clinics that you're in or within clinics you're connected to. I'm really excited about this. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Can't beat this, you know, that you guys are here. You sat through all this stuff. You're willing to do it, and you're smart and effective and professional, great people. So you just have me pumped up. I'm so excited. And you know, down the road, if we can figure out how to offer CEUs and do some outreach, that's great too. Like we did before. Maybe we can get an OT to train with us. And we could do a conference, or we could do a day-long thing with different segments.
I have a friend who is a OT assistant, like she's trained in that and she works in the schools. And so your idea is makes me want, I'm going to reach out to her. I also follow some people on Instagram who are you know, that are OT specialists. And so that kind of, I learn things.
Cool. That's so wonderful. Well, all I can say is thank you. Thank you all so much. This has been so wonderful. I'm so excited. And it's wonderful to hear about the good work you're all doing.
Karen, we just thank you for being willing to invest in us. This has been a great opportunity for us to learn and just to organize and just to get to be encouraged to do this good work that we're doing.
Yeah, and you know, with the rise in autism, the last statistic I saw was 1 in 49. I just can't even make sense of that, you know?
So I noticed that being when I'm working with Reach, like I didn't realize how prominent it is. And I was like, wow, like I had a few people that I had prior to being in Reach, but like once I was in Reach, I'm like, there was a lot of people with or people who, what I also know is a lot of people who were suspected of autism or diagnosed later on and not diagnosed as a kid. And I spoke with someone the other day doing their assessment, and they were saying how when they were younger and they were in school, that they were suspected of either having autism or ADHD, but because of the stigma around mental health and, you know, they were a religious family, they didn't believe in like getting services. So they were like, nope, and didn't give her the help she needed. So, and it was just like fascinating because a lot of these people that are older would fit in that category. So I think, you know, as we're working and changing the idea and the conversation around mental health, as well as, you know, autism and intellectual disabilities, it can help change some of that and catch people early on versus later.
Yeah, such a good point. Exactly. And now we're seeing it like Karen's story with this poor guy. Oh, I missed all these years when I could have gotten some help.
I have a quick question, and maybe this was covered. I apologize, it was late today. But, you know, I've read a lot about how autistic people don't like the terms high functioning and low functioning. And as a clinician, what are ways to talk about the ways autistic people interact with the world without using those terms?
Oh yeah, that's a good challenge. You know,
because
so
like, and like I'm thinking of, you know, not in terms of like, because I don't ever want to, you know, label someone with something, especially because something like that can be so damaging, or that, you know, particularly autistic people don't like. But in terms of like treatment planning, you know, it's helpful to know, oh, you know, this person might have more difficulty, you know, with certain or whatever. So I'm wondering, like, what other ways might we use in our notes or during our treatment planning to describe, you know, those things?
Yeah. So I was told by somebody with autism to stop saying people who don't use words versus people who use, and she said non-speaking. So when you have folks that don't use words, they're non-speaking because they're still using words on some level, and they're usually understanding freaking everything, right? Like the video we saw last week on Listen. So they're non-speaking, and the way I put it with complex needs, and when they're very involved, I'll say with very involved needs or complex needs, I'm speaking with complex needs, or, on the autism spectrum, and then you describe other things about them. So it makes it very clear that they are what we used to call high functioning,
Okay.
You just work around it, and speaking versus non-speaking is kind of with the language they're using right now. And then it's funny.
Not nonverbal. Just
yeah, we don't say that. And it's funny because there was big controversy over Autism Speaks, and a lot of people with autism really hate them.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't want to say that autism is a disorder ever. Like, that's very upsetting to say it's a disorder, because people say this is who I am. And then they also rebel against saying some folks will call themselves an autistic, because the Autism Speaks said with autism, never say an autistic. So some folks with autism like to call themselves an autistic as a statement against Autism Speaks. I'm an autistic, and stop calling what I am a disorder. I've heard people say that. So you can say either one that way, but non-speaking instead of nonverbal, because what was explained to me, I'm always being corrected. Somebody is always telling me I said the wrong thing. So, when you give these talks, it's like, oh, what did I just say? So when I was saying not using words. And then they were saying, these people are using words. They're understanding words. Often they're using technology. Now, how discriminating is that? I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You're right. You're right. So they said, that's why we say non-speaking.
I would say for myself, I don't really even use, if I'm telling you something quickly, this person is like at this level like that, so you understand it as a professional, that's the only time I really use it. When I'm talking to an individual client, I'm addressing them and asking, I'm assessing with them, do you struggle with this? Are you obsessed with this? Or, I'm asking them questions to see where their level of, and for my brain, this is just my brain. This isn't just how I think. It helps me to explain emotionally to me if they're like more like how old would you say they are emotionally? If you're talking about a regular, because that to me helps me. It doesn't help them. I don't tell them, well, I think you're like a 5-year-old. I would never say it to anybody. That would be totally disrespectful. But it helps my brain to know, okay, this is where I'm gonna need to recognize my words, where I need to lower, make sure my vocabulary is correct, recognize where they struggle and that sort of thing. But I would, and my treatment plans are, I don't really like treatment plan books. I hate them. So I mostly focus on, what do you need today? And what are your struggles? And then it becomes, you want to learn to tolerate better, be more flexible. How do you learn or whatever it is that is there, and not really about those terms that are, they just really kind of get in the way. They're really just kind of, I use them, when I think of the differences, do they use the English language? Do they speak like the way I'm talking to you now, or do they use other means? It's probably one of the bigger issues of just how do they communicate, and so that we are on the same page as them, and that we can get to them what we need. But otherwise, I don't. That's kind of where I focus, and then it kind of flows out of that. Because when they recognize if I'm respecting them and they recognize that, then all the other stuff, they can tell me, I don't like when this is going on, or I don't like this or that, but they can tell me if they don't like something that I'm doing. But I think if I'm compassionate and kind to them, then they typically, start to open up about it. So, but that's a good point. Cause I wouldn't go with it. Cause it all says autism spectrum disorder in my credible, in my EHR. So that's all I'm going with.
Yeah.
So much. I have to go for my client, but I really appreciate all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, I hope we can stay in touch.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.